I'd like to call the Germantown School District Ad Hoc Transportation Committee meeting to order on January 6th at 4:30 p.m. Roll call, Medved.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
And Pollack is here. Item number 3, agenda revisions and approval.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Brown with the motion, Medved with the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4, approval of the September 27th, 2021 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Medved with the motion, Brown with the second. Let's open it up for some discussion and explanation. First off, we did have this ad hoc transportation committee that existed back in 2021 for the purposes of doing something similar that we're doing here this year, to begin the RFP process, ultimately decide on a new 5-year contract. In full disclosure, none of the 3 members that are currently on this committee were on that committee back in 2021. But Mr. Loth was on that committee. He did review those minutes. Do you have anything to add before we move forward?
I don't have anything to add. I would say they're accurate. It was a memory refresher from, I think, 2021, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're accurate. That's what we talked about back then. The meeting was mainly related to COVID-19 issues back then and bus transportation, so we're good on those minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
The one other thing I would add before, if there's any other discussion, is that we're going to take a look at, once our work on this ad hoc committee wraps up, what we can do to approve those final minutes and close that chapter as we end this, as we wrap up our work as this ad hoc committee. So we'll figure that out once we reach the end. Any other questions or discussion?
Nope.
Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5, reports and updates, request for proposal for student transportation services. Ms. Holtendorf.
Sure. Today I am bringing the draft RFP to the committee, but I wanted to give a little background regarding why we are going out for RFP for transportation. Sorry, facing the wrong way. So our contract with Go Right Way expires at the end of this school year. About 5 years ago, our contract was up then, but then we extended it for a 5-year period, so that's why our 5 years is now going to be up at the end of this school year. So we're going to go out for RFP. I don't believe we have gone out for RFP in the past years from all the information that I've gathered. So we have been with Right Way since the 1950s. So it is the due diligence of the district to have to go out for RFP and see what other services are out there. So the board did approve to create this committee, and we did receive volunteers to be on this committee. And then I reached out to all the bus companies that I was aware of in the state of Wisconsin and reached out to them to see if they would even be interested in submitting an RFP. So I believe I reached out to 9 or 10 of them, either via their website or a phone call, and 6 of them did reply and say they were interested in our RFP process. I could say that there are bus companies where I would call like an overarching bus company, where there's bus companies underneath them. So even though I reached out to 9 or 10 of them, one would say we're not submitting because our sister company is submitting, because we really are the same company. So, but one must do this region and another one must do that region. So I could say that all 9 are going to submit. It's just that their sister company is submitting for them. So then on December 6th, I drafted an RFP. I sent it to the 3 committee members for review. I received some feedback, so made minor changes to the draft RFP that the committee has received again. But then I wanted to get feedback from the committee today, or have a discussion before I send it out to the potential vendors. At the beginning of the RFP, there was a timeline. Depending on how the discussion goes today, I have the timeline updated where everything basically moved back or forward 3 weeks. So that my suggestion would be that the RFP would go out on January 9th if it's okay with the committee today. So if there's any questions or discussions, I'd be happy to.
You want to share why it's not publicly?
Oh, absolutely, I'm sorry. And then the RFP was sent to all the committee and the board members. We are not putting it on the agenda or in the packet as of today because it should follow the RFP process. If it is posted publicly now, the potential vendors would have access to it, which they should not have access to it until the day it's released. And you don't want to give them access to a draft where something could change before it actually finally goes out. So we will, once it is sent out on, if it goes out on the 9th, we will then attach it to this packet because then it will be public record.
Okay, thank you. We'll open it up for any questions again or comments.
I have none.
Oh, Mr.
I'll start off as the board's tech ed guy and autos guy. Page 16, item 14, the district contractor agreed to explore the option of using alternative fuel vehicles. I read that sentence and I said, yes, diesel or gasoline, but no other fuels. No batteries, no compressed natural gas, and no propane. Diesel or gasoline, just due to fire hazard that you sometimes
Which page number are you on?
see. Page 16. So it's 16 the way they're labeled on the pages, not how it might come up on the sidebar of your computer screen.
Under number 14?
Yeah, number 14. So it's near the top of the page, actually.
It's on page 21 if you're looking at the PDF email that was sent out.
Okay, sorry.
It's right under.
Yeah, 21.
Yep. I can add a parenthesis that says diesel or gasoline. if
Yeah,
you'd
so
like.
the reason typically school buses would only be diesel, but our federal government has ruined diesel engines so bad that gasoline is now competitive in place of diesel engines. You know, they're typically V10s, large V8s or V10s, and they work pretty nicely without all the issues that diesel is now burdened with. So that's why I would say gas or diesel would be okay.
Good points.
And have you looked into how many incidents there's been with natural gas or alternative fuels?
I would say all you gotta do is do a search on YouTube, and you'll see all the fires and things that you wanna see. Public buses, public transportation and batteries going off, school buses and batteries going off. Compressed natural gas is a whole nother issue. If they're typically wound filament, high pressure tanks that can rupture quite easily, and when they rupture, their fuel vaporizes instantly, goes all over the place, and then it's kind of an air fuel explosive after that. The whole thing just goes up
Yeah.
in one big mushroom cloud. So going for gasoline and diesel, you know, some people might think it's not environmentally friendly to say that, but it's not environmentally friendly to have a school bus that's on fire either. And diesel and gas are quite well known how they work and how they operate, especially in cold weather. You know, they're really the safest fuels for buses. It turns out also that battery buses don't work very well in cold weather. The range is greatly reduced, and they have something for the general public to know. They have a diesel heater in them where a battery bus is still using diesel fuel. they're burning it to heat the antifreeze, which is circulated through the same heat exchangers as though the bus was a diesel or gasoline-powered bus. And they also use that antifreeze to heat the battery packs to try and get more range out of them as though it was a 70 or 80-degree day outside. So I find it kind of ironic that we would use diesel fuel to heat batteries to make the bus more range, give it more range to operate. So I viewed this number 14 on page 16 of the PDF. The alternate fuels would be gas or diesel, nothing else. Yes, Russ.
I didn't know that was the process for electric diesel or electric bus or vehicle that size. It's interesting to find out.
Yeah.
Do we know, do any of the companies that we submit are going to submit to, do either any of them advertise alternative fuel?
Yeah, so we've been, Rightways reached out to us and asked if we'd consider going to more of electric buses. And I said not at this time when we were in contract, so I'm going to guess that some will reply with that.
Interesting.
I don't know the cost difference between it.
They're looking, yeah, on fleet management sides, they're testing the waters for interest for districts would be my guess.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Other initial questions? Do you have any to start?
I do have some stuff to start, specific to language in here. But overarchingly, obviously this is the start of the process to find out what our busing looks like for the future, the next 5 years of the district. Is this document where we would architect the conversation around a multi-proposal approach to give us information to understand if we would like our schools to all run at the same time?
Mhm.
And what that cost would look like, or the current schedule where we have some schools that are a bit off, and causing some home issues, especially on the back end, or sometimes daycare issues on the front end for our families.
Mhm. So I received that feedback in the initial, when I sent out the initial draft. So I did add a section on the last page of the RFP that's labeled financial summary requests. That's basically requesting 2 types of scenarios. I didn't give them detail because I don't usually give them specific details when it comes to RFPs because it's their expertise and their responsibility to reply with the best information that they have. One of them is stating that to keep the same time frames that we have with the altered start and end times, as long as they keep the instructional minutes within that time the same. They can't reduce instructional minutes because they want to have, the bus routes come. So they have to stick with the instructional times we have. And then the other one is to align the elementaries so they're all at the same time. So you should have apple-to-apple proposals. So each vendor that replies to the RFP should have 2 proposals. Unless they have these 2 proposals, we'll say with gas or diesel, and then 2 other proposals with these 2 scenarios with electric. So they might submit multiple scenarios, but these 2, when it comes to timing and start and end times, will be part of our request.
And then reliability of transportation, that's on them, from what I was reading in this
Mhm.
proposal. They're required for the maintenance side of it, and they have to show their maintenance and fleet service plan.
Correct. There's, they show what plan they have in regards to the maintenance for their buses. They have to provide their safety plan for our students. They have to supply the trainings that their staff have to go through annually, and if they have more than that training, the training they have to go to when a person is a new bus driver. They have to provide, obviously, certain amounts of insurance to us, and then they have to go through the detail of how many buses they would have, and the opportunity to be able to track buses, because that has been brought up in the past, if there would be like an app where you could track the bus. So some bus companies have that, so that's in here. It's a pretty detailed RFP. There's also a sample of the contract in there, not stating that that's the contract we have to use, but there are certain things built into there stating that if they are late for certain reasons, or if students aren't being dropped off and picked up at certain times, there's a financial, fee, I guess you would call it, towards them, to make sure that they,
I'll get to those in
Oh,
just a
I'm
second, 'cause
sorry.
I have a question on that.
I'm answering too many questions.
Yep, no, you're good. The more information is the better. So page 18 of the version that was emailed to us, it ends in 9 and then there's nothing with it. Are we missing something in this, or did something just get removed?
Sure, hold on. Is it page 18 on it or in the PDF?
On
On the page.
the
Okay.
page, yeah.
This? This is my page 18. Oh, and the PDF. What's
Yeah,
that
sorry,
page?
yeah, on the PDF version.
I think I've got the
Oh,
PDF and
17.
I don't have a 9 on mine.
It would be on the document itself.
I'm sorry, Russ? What'd you say?
It's on the actual document itself, page 18.
It's under this section, drivers and attendants.
Yep, drivers in attendance 1 through 8 are there.
I'll just read
How can
Chris's.
it be different than mine?
I think it depends on how you could, I converted it off the Word document into a PDF.
Oh, I'm looking at it in Word.
And then scroll
Okay,
down.
it was, so it would
Yeah,
be
9
page,
should not, it shouldn't be.
okay, that was
Sorry.
just a clerical thing.
I didn't see it on mine.
Enter one too many times.
I'll find it. You know me in Word.
So then it would be, where did this go? Under Appendix A, and there's not a page number on it, unfortunately.
I have Appendix A, and some of the items wouldn't attach page numbers to them,
So
believe me, I tried.
Appendix A, Skyward Integration.
Correct, I
So
have that
the
page.
page directly following that, cost bid form number 1.
Okay,
I can't read anything that's in that graph. So I don't know if it converted poorly or,
oh, it might have converted poorly, so it's basically showing their annual,
just in the one that will be submitted, it's gonna be,
okay,
it'll be legible, I'm assuming, right?
yes. Oh, yours, yeah, mine does,
In the preview mode, it looks.
I'm
good.
sorry, yeah, ours does not look like that, it won't look like that.
Okay.
Once you download it
If you
into.
download it into Word, it's clean, but in the preview mode, it's messy.
So then I have a couple, where'd this go? Page 5, the bidder shall provide most cost effective, and I think you've already started, this is item 7 on page 5. The most cost effective student focused proposal.
Mm-hmm.
If that's worded in that manner, wouldn't we end up with the current situation, if you're asking them to only submit the most cost effective?
You are correct. So, that was in there prior to me adding that final piece, that part at the bottom, so I can
Okay.
rewrite that so it mentions the piece later on in the RFP.
And, sorry, my notes are a little jumbled here. Page 8, it's gonna be the Student Transportation Services RFP evaluation criteria. And this is more along that same theme. So you have safety at 30 possible points, reference and
Oh.
expertise at 30 possible points.
Mhm.
And then it says cost.
Yep.
And there's no bulletin behind it other than it says 40 possible points.
Mhm.
Is there any bulletin that's gonna be added to that?
I don't think so, unless you want, I mean, it's,
I just found the others had a breakdown of meaning, and when I look at this and we continue that conversation of trying to receive 2 proposals, that we have a good weight
Mhm.
to have discussion around. If it's just cost, and there's no bulletin, is that an opportunity to put in there? Cost efficient to current model, or cost efficient to a model that would allow us to run our schools on similar or same times?
I mean, I can add a bullet point, it's still gonna be 40 points for cost. I mean, I can put the 2 bullet points in there, but like, I don't think, I guess I don't know.
I'm
I
not
mean,
saying
if
it's
the max
needed,
is 40
I'm just looking at it, and if I see just cost, and the items above it have more
Bullet points?
reference information to pull, but the highest weighted item
Mhm.
is now cost at 40 over the two that are at 30.
Right.
I don't know if that's an opportunity to change that a little.
To add some more description in there. I can add bullet points to the bottom and send them to the committee if you'd like.
Sure.
At the end of the day, though, cost is high cost, low cost. I mean, there's not qualifiers like there are around safety and reference and expertise. You could say.
But there are qualifiers for the cost that we're asking for.
Sure,
One proposal, we're specifically asking for something we know will cost more,
right.
and we don't want
Which
to
will
preclude
get a lower
them.
score automatically. Because the cost would be higher. You know what I'm saying? Like-
Not if our community wants it more.
Sure.
So,
But this is a rubric, right? So the point value will come out differently.
sure, but that rubric doesn't take into weight communal preference.
I understand.
I mean, I
That
guess
would
you
be-
could
I guess
have.
that's my-
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine, go ahead.
If you're going to take each RFP as actually two separate ones, because you're having two scenarios, right? We're asking for basically two proposals in one RFP. You could have two evaluations, like one for each one. And if cost is higher, but all elementaries are at the same time, and that's more important to the person doing the evaluation that's listening, they'd rate that higher than if, cost is less, but you have different times, they wouldn't rate that 40. So I would suggest, and the board can make their decision, that you would have two rubrics. Same rubric, excuse me, but one for each scenario.
Sure.
So each RFP would have two separate scoring, because if they're one, then we're.
Yeah, I mean, this is notice to the companies on how we're going to score them, so they understand transparently how they'll be flushed out and scored.
Right.
Maybe there's an opportunity there to ask for that then.
Mhm.
Each proposal that we're asking for is scored on its own merits, not cross-compared or however you, right, other than the financial aspect. 'Cause
Right.
if we like the company regardless, and then it's just which one costs more and what we can afford or not afford, or what we have to give up in order to afford, right? That's,
And I can put that at the bottom of this chart that we have here, just explaining that, because in reality, if we pick, like, the rubric's the overall RFP. So you could say, okay, a company X got 99 points, but that's not telling us which model we picked out of the two that they're submitting. We just say this is the vendor we're choosing.
sure.
But then, so I think that's a good idea if we have two separate rubrics for each scenario per vendor.
Because I think last time, because of the situation the district was in, I think there was at least 3 different scenarios that were being considered. And we each measured them in its own unique way, but we knew what a priority was. Back then, the priority was cost,
Right.
period. I don't think there's really anything else below that.
Safety.
So I think, well, yes. But I also seem to remember, and as you pointed out earlier, it never really went out for RFP, so we were.
Right.
Well, we were in
We
contract, right?
experienced, well,
Mhm.
yeah, we had experienced safety, we knew that we had the trust and safety with Right Way. It was really just, we need to do something, so, I mean, if the companies who are going to be submitting for RFP happen to watch this, which I think would be smart of them to, I think it's in their best interest to realize, like, we're interested in, even if they feel like, well, we can do it at X, and we can do it at X plus a really large dollar amount, just submit that information, because we need all of that information to really understand what position we're in as far as what's on the table in front of us. I think it also helps from a community standpoint that they also see, well, X versus X plus a lot is what we need to weigh and have that discussion ultimately. So I think I think to add a little bit extra on that page, I think is gonna be beneficial, so that they, when they're going through it, if I'm that company going, okay, what do I need to do? And I'm looking at all the different things, I have a better understanding. You know what? Let's give them a few different scenarios that we could help them out with, and, I mean, it's in their best interest too,
Mm-hmm.
so.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm looking for, and to drive that communal conversation side of it. I just have a couple more, and then, so that penalties section, which is page 13, are those, it discusses 5 minutes after, 15 minutes after, all these different kind of scenarios, I guess?
Mm-hmm.
Is that an industry standard? Is that just the current model we're under?
We
I
are
guess
not under that.
What drives that, those numbers?
Feedback from other school districts.
Okay.
So it's not in our current, it doesn't have to be in here. I wouldn't call it a standard. I'd call it just what other people have added in over the years to
Sure, it's
hold them
accountability to the
accountable.
company to maintain proper
Yes.
services or expectation of services.
And it's also, I mean, 5 minutes, I'm not gonna be like, you were 5 minutes late, you know, I think it's more of a conversation, or if you're not informing us, if you're not, you know, telling parents that things are gonna be happening, I think it's more of that. I don't think it's something like we'd be tracking, or other districts track, down to the time, you know, down to the 5 minute time. So I think it's more of a like, if it's gonna become an issue, we're gonna have to put this in place.
And then, I don't know if that would be the spot for it, but in regards to school closing or cancellation,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe I missed it, it's a little large document,
Yep.
but what in here is gonna help us dictate that process, whether it's school closure for emergency situation, and what outlines then do we have on, let's say we choose to close for situation A,
Mm-hmm.
which is called an emergency outside of weather. Are we liable for the cost of transportation that day, even if it doesn't occur? Or is it at a reduced rate? That's part of the question. The other question that would be on a snow emergency. Let's say the district chooses to stay open and the bus company informs us we're unable to get our drivers here, so we can't provide you the service this day.
Mm-hmm.
Are they then penalized for that? Do we still pay for the transportation that day? Because on their end, they are unable to fulfill the service. Or vice versa, they could fill it and we choose to be closed for a snow emergency or weather emergency. Are we then still on the hook for it? And maybe this is a little bit more for Dr. Reuter on the process of how that plays out. I understand you discuss it with other CISA-1 schools or
Yep.
area schools and you kind of make that decision. But I've also heard in the past, well, but the bus company couldn't provide us service that day, or probably couldn't, and that weighs in on why we're canceling.
I think that's already addressed under penalties. Number 5, failure to perform any assigned bus route or any confirmed trip. Penalty of 2 times the normal charge for that route trip that was missed. So I think that, your second piece I think is covered.
Yeah, but, so if you just go by that, I would agree. But I'm aware of the situations that play out where that pressure is put internally on the school districts around us. We can't provide you this service, or it'd be really hard for us when we talk to the bus company to get our drivers here. So you should do what's in the best interest of your schools, because we would be running late with service or whatever it would be. And I guess maybe an explanation of that process for you
And
would be
when,
great.
you know, we call school, it's a collaboration usually with surrounding districts as well. We have to take into account not just the safety of kids getting to work, but also, I'm sorry, not to work, but to school, but adults getting to work as well. That is a factor that plays into it, as well as our local municipalities telling us conditions of roads and how that will look, as well as long-term forecasting and what afternoon looks like. So since I've been here, we've never called school off because the bus company said we can't get drivers. Have there been comments that, yes, there could be delays? Sure, we already had that this year. We had inclement weather where we didn't call school off and we had delayed buses. But that's also because Washington County doesn't plow in a very proper time. The village does, but not the county. So I wouldn't say that since I've been here, we've had that as that's why we have to call school off.
And in the case that we do, how does that play out? We choose to have it, they can't provide it. So then that would fall on item 5?
Yeah. We're saying we want your service, we need your service today. We have no reason not to call school off. We've been alerted by.
I mean, our, and this is getting a little in the weeds, but I would think our reason for canceling school is in our student and our employees' best interests.
Mhm.
And if an outside contractor can't perform the duties they've been contracted because they're located in a place that doesn't receive sufficient plowing, then that's a hub terminal location issue for them that shouldn't impact our decision on whether to have school or not.
Correct.
So when you say employee, I'm assuming you mean ours,
Our
not-
employees, yes.
not theirs.
It's not our
Not that we
responsibility to
don't
make sure
care.
their employees get to work.
Yeah.
It's our responsibility to make sure our employees get to work safely,
Okay.
just like our kids.
Russ, can I jump in on that same thread? Penalties?
Yes, and then I think I'm about done.
All right, thanks.
Or done, sorry, thank you.
So with the penalties, and maybe it's in here and I missed it.
Yep.
If we do have bad weather and decide to keep it open, are we holding that against the bus company if they arrive 10 minutes late?
So if we have bad weather and we decide to stay open
Mhm.
and they show up to schools late,
Right,
we
the
do
bus
not
ends
hold
up
it
at
in.
the school late.
no. I would say no. Usually we communicate with them. The bus company's calling me and they're saying, what do you think? This is what we're thinking. Like, let's say we were already in school, okay? What do you think? We're gonna get kids home late if we have to, or can we end school early? And we would make the decision if, let's say, we're not gonna end school early. Nope, we will notify families that, you're more than welcome to come pick your student up, or your student may be home late due to the weather. So we would not, penalize them for that.
And we've proactively communicated.
And I would agree with that, but do we need to put that in this document that, these penalties don't apply if the buses are delayed due to inclement weather?
Sure.
Yeah, and I can add that again, and putting a draft contract in an RFP isn't needed. So I can take the contract portion out of it, because that's something that you negotiate and talk about
Certainly.
after the RFP is completed. This is just kind of like a heads up, these are some of the things that we're considering, as a district, and then it would be for them to say, we'd love to work with the district, but we don't agree with number 1 in 5 minutes, or whatever. So, I mean, I can add that in there, I'm not calling this our final contract with the company that we would choose.
If
But I
we,
can add that in there.
if we added in there, I wouldn't be detailed as that. I'd just say exceptions.
That's
per
what I was
exception.
gonna put.
Yeah, and it does say in there penalties will not be imposed for situations beyond the contractor's control. So, I mean, there's already a little bit of language in there. Personally, I like the idea of having something like this as part of setting expectations, because there does need to be language that everybody understands as far as service level agreement. If they look at this and go, this is absolutely ridiculous, there's no way we would even agree to it, that's okay from their perspective as well, because I think in some cases, at least now it's starting to become more the distant past, there weren't necessarily service level agreement type language included in a lot of stuff. And so it gives us a little bit. They may actually come back with their own and say, well, yes, we agree to this, but we also expect this from you, which is their right to do that as well. So I could we tweak some of the language in there or whatever? Sure, I don't have a problem with it. But I like the idea of having some of that language in there, because
I would think
it
you'd
does
want
set
it as close as possible, because if you don't, and then you make some change prior to the official signing, but after the vendor's been picked, they
Yeah.
could say, well, our number's no longer valid, we didn't agree to that stipulation. I don't think we're gonna have something that outrageously large to change, but if we can have it as close as possible so they understand the expectations going in, that's probably best.
And gonna be a little dangerous in saying this, but I think most people with common sense, if it's a rainy, slick day would understand if the bus is 6 minutes late instead of, and crossing over that 5 minutes, and it's not gonna be a penalty to them.
Right.
But if there's a week that goes by and it's sunny and dry and perfect weather conditions and there's a bus route that is consistently 20 minutes late,
Right.
that's an issue.
Yeah.
And that needs to be not only addressed, but maybe some penalties also applied there. So, like I said, may have you've gone down that common sense route by mistake, but I'll pay that price. Any other questions, comments? I think,
Tom has one and then I have one.
go ahead.
Yeah, I do. I keep thinking about the initial discussion that we had about alternative fuels. I agree with many of the comments that Mr. Loth had. I'm definitely gonna do some research on natural gas vehicles and the risks with those. But I guess I think we should get a price for something like an electric bus. Perhaps it could save us $1 million a year. Sure, there's shortcomings of it. It uses a diesel engine to keep it heated and things like that, but why not at least get that price and then we make the decision? I would say
Make it
we
their option.
We want
if
a
you wanna
gas
submit.
and/or
Yeah,
diesel quote or price as a response, but you can also, if you want, provide an electric price.
Yeah, I mean, as long as the expectations are it doesn't interrupt or cause issues with service.
Agreed.
To which they have to have a fleet that withholds that, and it's their responsibility.
Diesel or battery buses are only practical if there's if they're subsidized by the federal government. Otherwise, the cost is so much higher than gas or diesel, it's not worth it. And I, for one, while the federal government seems to be good at spending our money, I have no interest in using buses that have been subsidized by the federal government.
I do have to say that when the vendor has reached out to ask if we want, there are grants out there, so, that's how they would get them. I would say that if we are looking for them to submit whatever, options they want to, I don't wanna say, please now submit this option and this option, because now you have 4 different I mean, you have start and end time this scenario, start and end time this stereo, this bus and this bus, so then I would just leave it out there and say what we have currently written in here, and I wouldn't label, gas or diesel, and if you wanna do this too, because those are their options, like, those are the 3 options, so then I would just leave it open and then they could submit. The more specific you get on these, you have to give them the ability to submit their proposals and what they believe as a company and how they wanna provide services to a school district. So if we don't wanna label it and we still wanna keep it open, or some of the committee wants to keep it open, then I would just leave number 14, I believe is 14.
Yeah.
Yes, 14.
I lean more towards leaving the language open, just because of that point. The bottom line is that if a company submits their RFP and that's all they have are battery buses and it's, $1 million savings, well, then it should still ultimately go in front of this committee and ultimately in front of the board, assuming it goes by committee. And that's where we either end up at 7-0 for, 7-0 against, 4-3 for, 4-3 against, whatever the situation was. I was on the short end of the stick of the time changes. But when I talk to people, I go with what the board decided. So I have a feeling that there may be bus companies out there who would love to take advantage of those grants to begin to upgrade their bus fleets and everything else off of a district. But I couldn't tell you, to be honest with you, if Right Way has the natural gas storage facilities over at their place if they were running natural gas buses. The grants will cover a bunch, but at the same time, this contract starts July 1st of next year. So unless they have all of those things already in place, or can get enough of their situation in place by July 1st, we're at worst, we're gonna have a mixed crew or fleet running us around, running our students around. So I'm okay leaving it open, and if a company wants to submit whatever they want to submit, whether it's one scenario or 6 scenarios, let them do it. Why not? It's this committee's job to at least do that initial vetting, and I trust that everybody here is probably going to be at that next meeting that we start to talk more in detail about it. But we're a committee, we're a board. We should be able to see whatever these companies want to submit to us, is where I kind of stand.
I agree with that, but I do think and it should come forward, and we should do our research on a point that Mr. Loth, Director Loth brought up. It is incumbent upon us to check the safety record,
Oh, absolutely.
because there's no cost offset if there's a safety concern. Other than that, we should discuss it.
I follow this stuff simply because I'm an engine guy, not because I was doing it for the benefit of the school district. The other thing I noticed is school districts that have gotten grants to get electric buses, battery buses, because sometimes a district has its own service department to service the buses, and the drivers are employees of the school. Particularly in cold weather climates, the buses get parked and they don't get used because they don't work. They can't complete the longer runs in a day without being recharged. So it's a huge problem. You know, there's a few districts that have jumped out there and tried it and they're not satisfied. The buses aren't there yet.
To me, the battery thing in our environment is a big concern.
Yeah.
Because I think that's been shown. You know, the safety issue, obviously very important, and yes, I'm not arguing that there aren't YouTube videos of school buses that have incidents, whether it be natural gas, batteries, whatever the situation is, but that doesn't tell me it's 1 in 100,000 or 1 in 100 million. I mean, that's YouTube videos are fine, but those will get the views. This bus ran perfectly fine isn't going to get any views on YouTube. So it's important for us to see what kind of information we get back, and maybe we won't be surprised, maybe we will be surprised, but to your point, that's when we go, this number is phenomenal, but, and then dig into it and see what the actual stats behind it is, rather than a news video from South Dakota somewhere or whatever.
And we'll wait for hydrogen.
I just have a bus capacity issue, or question, I should
Issue?
say. It's not issue,
Already?
but no, but just question. We always hear this the opening week of school. My kid were on a bus, they couldn't have a seat, they didn't have a seat, it was overcrowded, X, Y, and Z. In these contracts, or in this proposal we're asking for, they set the route and schedule, right? As far as their bus goes. So what level of oversight do we have as a district to say, you've scheduled too many stops for Route A, it's clearly overcrowded? Like, what is our oversight and recourse with, you need to reroute this scenario, and unfortunately, it may add a route that you didn't bid for us, but because of your miscalculation, in order to get this this overcrowded bus to the correct population, you have to now add this.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I believe that if we have a company that comes back with route, like a drastically lower number than we have now, we'd have to look into that, because they're not going to necessarily route our buses. They don't have that much information. We're not giving them addresses, we're not giving
Correct.
them locations. So we're saying, here is where we at today. If they're coming back and saying we can reduce 2 bus routes, I'm gonna have some conversations with them, because, I don't believe that would be possible. But once you get into a contract, I can't say, you said 20 and now you have 21, we're not
24.
paying it, or whatever, right? You're in a contract now, and the contract's per route usually. And currently, when we have routes that are getting attention, that are saying that they're overcrowded, we're watching cameras, we're working with the bus company. We have added a route if it's sees fit to add the route. But I don't think you can just stick it to the RFP. Like I said, if it comes back and it's less, I'm gonna have some more detailed questions on how you got to that number.
Yeah, I'm just asking for that, kind of that forethought as we go through the process. Because we do, every year we hear that, and every year I hear a parent or 4 or 5 say, well, I'm just not gonna have my kid on the bus anymore because of this. And now they're willing to incur, and whether that's an overreaction or not, I can't judge it, it's everyone's personal opinion at that point. But to ensure that we aren't legitimately overpopulating any given bus, we need to be able to have that oversight into.
On our part, or the bus company's part? I think it's a
We
combination
need
of both.
we need an ability to say, we believe this is overpopulated, you've underestimated the routes needed.
Correct. So during the RFP process, or just in general?
In general, I guess because you have the contract in here, it gets a
Oh,
little
okay.
blended, right?
Yeah, in
And I
general,
didn't
yes, we
see
do have that
that.
authority to say we need to add a route, or we need to reduce a route. Bus companies usually will, put the amount of students on there as capacity. And as I'm sure you all are aware, capacity isn't necessarily comfortable. Because the law states that so many people can fit into the bus, right? But there's all different sizes of people. So you can't say that 3 kids can sit to this seat, and you'll hear parents say this with the backpack and the instrument and believe me, bus companies have brought me the seat space, because they have seat spaces in which you're supposed to be able to fit into, and people don't necessarily fit into that piece. But it's also the older kids not wanting you to sit with them. So I think that's more of an issue. I'm not saying that our buses aren't
Yeah,
crowded.
no, I
But I'm
agree.
saying that there's a lot to do with
Oh,
it.
I agree with a lot of that, and I think that's why you monitored the cameras. And go, no,
Yes.
there just was unwilling participants to allow the space to be
Correct.
Right.
appropriately used.
So, yes,
I
we'll
I
address that.
fully understand that, but legitimately, if we're asking, because we're always asking to reduce costs, but fuel prices and everything else increase and maintenance increases. So how do we do both of those things and not expect them to cut a corner here or there? Or if they do cut a corner, such as bus space, we have protections to say, no, that's incorrect, you have to get another route in here. Okay.
Other questions? Mr. Medved?
I agree with a lot of it, people have said it, but I think overall, I think we need to let the process play out. We need to get the RFPs, and then, I mean, we have time now to do our due diligence on all of the concerns that we have and figure out, I think, cost is extremely important to this district, I get that, but I think safety definitely needs to be our priority. To Mike's point, the climate that we live in definitely is gonna have effect on what buses we may or may not choose. I think that's a big factor to look at as well. The company's safety record is also extremely important. You can have the best bus in the world with crash protections and whatever, but if you have bad drivers, we have a problem. So all of that needs to be taken a look at, but putting it out for proposal with as much information as I think we're giving them, I'm hopeful that they have ideas that we haven't thought of, because this is their job, they do it all the time. Hopefully they'll come back with something even more eye-opening for us to look at a good price that we can accept with a great safety record. That's what I'm hopeful for. So I guess, we have to see what they have to offer. I think we've given them with this proposal enough information of what we're looking for. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll get some good proposals.
One more thing, earlier today, I did looked up some information regarding the amount of students that are eligible to ride versus the amount of students that do ride. So it's about 66% of the students are eligible when it comes to public and private school, and compared, so there's about 4,200 students that are eligible to be on the buses, but only about 2,800 actually ride the buses. So that can change at any time, and we'd have to increase or decrease bus routes as well. But per our report to the state, we have about 66% of our population actually riding on our buses. And I think that's been consistent over the years. I went back about 4 years.
Sure. Are we able to understand pre and post start time change from this last decision that the Ad Hoc Committee made? Not the full board made, I guess, at one point.
So prior to that change, is that
Yeah,
what you're
because
asking?
I think we do have a group of parents that have dropped out of utilizing the bus just to slim those times down for themselves, and I think you have another group of parents that probably from the middle school opted out because they were cohorted with high schoolers.
That could be.
And it'd be interesting to see that number.
Mhm.
Because I think you might have some parents out there that would love to ride the bus if it was more accessible to them.
Have their students ride the bus.
Sorry, have the family of the students, yes, ride the
Yeah,
bus.
adults are not allowed in public school.
Well, someone's got to drive it. So, other than that, I'll step back and let the committee do their work. I just appreciate you guys letting us have the conversation and join you, so, thank you.
Anything else? Thank you. Item number 6, there is no unfinished business. Item number 7, there is no new business. Before we go to item number 8, I'd just like to thank Mr. Medved, Mr. Brown for volunteering to be on this committee. I'd like to also thank President Eward for asking me to be the chairman of this committee. Hopefully we'll do some good work over the next couple months. Hopefully you guys have some extra time on your hands because we're gonna have to dig deep based off of at least this initial information that we've been provided tonight. With nothing else, I'd take one last motion.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Oop.
Oh,
Oh, Mr.
I
Olson.
think we could still say something after that motion. I'd like to thank, our business manager, Brittany Altendorf, for this. Reading all the pages and all the words, this is really comprehensive, so it's not something that, gets done overnight, so thank you for that. And anyone else who contributed that I may not have mentioned. It's all you, huh? Thank you for that. Yeah, it's very complete in my opinion, and there isn't too much that we could find wrong with it. I don't think. It's a very good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Second.
With the motion, Medved with the second, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Meeting ends at 5:23 p.m.